Welcome to the 37 Rounds podcast. I'm your host, James Alexander Hobbs, and I'm joined today by my co-host,
Albie Buckland.
Here at the 37 Round podcast, we like to talk about the latest news, updates on some of our favourite topics. Today, we are talking about Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. So what a first episode to start with, Bert. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. You're obviously a huge MMA fan, and you've been watching Ben Askren for years. I'm a big boxing fan. And there's not much to go off with Jake Paul, but I think Ben Askren is kind of the main topic of sort of how this fight is going to play out.
It comes down to styles make matchups, and it's just a classic wrestler versus a striker, but obviously it's in the boxing world. So, yeah, really interested to see who comes out on top.
It is interesting you say that because it is styles that make fights. And I think Jake Paul has marketed himself so well that are we believing the Jake Paul hype of he's actually got hands and he's now an official boxer? Or is it that Ben Askren just doesn't look the part and he looks so uncomfortable in the ring that, again, you're thinking maybe Jake Paul's got this one?
Well, Jake Paul, he can hit pads, he can hit bags, and he's knocked 2 people out. So Ben Askren's only knocked 6 people out in his career. So if I know people give Jake Paul a lot of stick, the fighters he's fighting aren't real fighters, but you still got to step in the ring and knock people out. And he's obviously got that knockout power. So it's going to be interesting.
He has, but the caliber of people he's knocked out isn't sort of the caliber that Ben Askren's knocked out. Like you've watched a couple of main events and a couple of you've actually seen Ben Askren fight live, but on TV, and you've seen how the fight is moving second by second, how he's coping with some big shots. I'm sure he's been in the ring with some serious strikers. Obviously, you'll know better than me who he's been in the ring with and what he's taken.
So obviously one of the fights wasn't very long.
Yeah.
Quickest knockout in UFC history. Got absolutely starched by Jorge Masvidal. But before that, he beat Robbie Lawler. It was controversy, really, because he got wobbled twice in that fight. I think it was definitely 2 or 3 times. And then he choked Robbie out of a bulldog choke. Do you know what a bulldog choke is?
No, what's that?
Right. Do you know when you go on the playground, you used to get someone in a headlock, right?
Yeah,
so he's got Robbie Lawler in a headlock, but he's putting pressure on his windpipe.
Right.
And Herb Dean steps in because he thinks Robbie Lawler's out. But it turned out he wasn't. So the fight ended and Ben Askren won the fight. But his boxing credentials weren't very good in that fight. Robbie was all over him. And Robbie Lawler is just an absolute animal in terms of striking. But he beat him. And he sort of weathered that storm. He's only got 4-ounce gloves on. And he got hit with everything that Robbie Lawler had. Still couldn't finish him. So, yeah, I do like Ben, but he's not a boxer. He's not a boxer, and he's a wrestler. And it's always down to that age-old, sort of old style MMA fighting. It's wrestlers and jiu-jitsu. What they'll do is they'll hang on to their opponent, take them down, basically drown them for 3 or 5 rounds, depending on what that is, and take them right into the deep end. And wrestlers are they're fit. They're really athletic. But this is what's interesting. I think Jake Paul's done a bit of wrestling, and definitely his brother is actually quite he does some high wrestling as well. So cardio is going to come into it if Ben can survive the first couple of rounds by Jake Paul. But again, comes back down to what you've said. Do you believe the hype? Can he do it? But who's he fought? Who's Jake Paul fought realistically?
Exactly. That's the thing. No one. He's fought a fellow YouTuber and a former basketball player or a current basketball. I can't remember if the guy's still fighting.
Nate Robinson. He's athletic and he was fit and capable of knocking someone out. He absolutely destroyed him. Did you watch that fight?
Yeah.
No, live.
I didn't watch it live. No, I watched it. Watched it after, but he did outbox him, outperformed him, had him on the back foot. But he's a basketball player. And when you've dedicated your whole career to a specific sport, you kind of skip certain areas where you can't learn footwork, technique, how to take a punch, how to, some people do have knockout power. They can hit hard and they've never done a day's training in their life. And it looks as if Jake Paul has potentially got knockout power. His fight against Deji, the first one, which isn't obviously one of his professional records, but Deji actually outboxed him. It's just that he got tired and eventually that caught up with Deji. Whereas Jake Paul's improved massively. There's no question about it, how much he's improved. But with Ben Askren, like you said, so Robbie Lawler?
Yeah, Robbie Lawler. Yeah.
And he's known for being a heavy hitter, is he? And a striker.
Yeah.
And Jake and Askren just ate those up and ended up taking him to the ground and submitting him, which takes some doing. You've got to be physically fit, mentally strong. I think that's going to be a massive difference in this game, where Ben Askren, he's shown that he can go 3, 4, 5 rounds of getting absolutely pummeled in the face with kicks, strikes, elbows, and still have it in him to fight when things aren't going his way. Because what is Askren's record?
So 19 wins, 2 losses, but it was a 19-fight win streak. The 2 losses are his last 2 fights. And all 3 fights in the UFC, he should not have taken. So he took Robbie Lawler, got real lucky with that fight, beat him. But you still got to be in there, right, to win it. So he's beaten Robbie Lawler, that's fine. He then fought Masvidal. That fight was a lucky 1 in a million strike, but Ben always goes for that takedown, and that's the only way he was going to beat Masvidal. Masvidal read it really well, flying the out the gates. I struggled to watch it. It's actually a horrible knockout, but it's spectacular in the same time. It's one of those you can't keep your eyes on.
Yeah.
But then I'm not sure if you heard of Damian Maia, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specialist. So against a wrestler, usually wrestlers don't do too well against guys that know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because the wrestler's game is to get them to the ground.
Yeah.
But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the groundwork is to submit the guy when you're on the ground. So it was a really awkward fight. With Ben striking, he hasn't got fast twitch muscles, so he's not explosive. But what he is, he's got this sort of stigma. He's a zombie, so he'll just walk forward, throw these really wild punches, and he's got this really unorthodox head movement, which I think Jake's going to struggle with. If you watch his fights, he'll throw an overhand right, but then he'll duck his head right down and then come up with like a left, and he's really all over the place. He's really hard to read. But what you've got to look at is he's got the experience, he's got the fights under his belt. Mm-hmm. He's done the 3 rounds. He's gone to decision 7 times. He's gone the distance 7 times. You can't learn that. You've got to do it, right? You've got to be dragged into the deep end. Jake hasn't had that. I hope that it goes the distance. Ben is absolutely pummeling by the latter rounds. That would be great to have a sort of an early explosive fight from Jake Paul, a really close fight towards the end, and I'd like to see it go to a decision, because a knockout would be a disappointment for everyone. I think we want to see them absolutely smash each other. But yeah, it's difficult because everyone's putting all this pressure on Ben that he's the face of MMA. Jake's been really clever in selecting Ben. And he wanted to fight Dylan Dennis as well, who's jiu-jitsu, not a striker. He mentioned Conor McGregor. He was never going to get that fight.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor, I think we all know, would smash him to pieces.
Yeah.
He's survived in there with Floyd, and he did go quite far into that fight when I thought it'd be 2 or 3 rounds and then Floyd would finish him. To be honest, even I was hoping that McGregor would get the knockout, obviously being an MMA fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't teach that conditioning, that level of conditioning. It's
because I remember when we were speaking about, episode 1 and Planet and Prep, and I said to you, he only does 3 rounds in MMA and the UFC, thinking it was the same as boxing, 3-minute rounds on you go. But it's what, 5-minute rounds?
So it's usually a 3 5-minute round fight, or it's a 5-round 5-minute fight for a championship fight. And what you've got to remember is he's actually he was champion in 2 other organizations. So 1 championship and Bellator. So he's got the credentials. He's not to be slept on, but he's getting closer to 40. He's closer to 40, and he's 36. He's 37 this year. It's going to be interesting. If Jake Paul's got the legs and he can go fight, how many rounds do you know?
Is it 8 rounds?
I thought it was 6 or 8, but
right, yeah.
But if Jake Paul's got the legs and he can throw for that amount of time, which I'm sure he's preparing for, then I think it's going to be a bad night for Ben. But we'll see.
8 rounds, 8 rounds. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
the thing with Jake Paul is he looks in great shape, and Ben doesn't look in great shape. But again, it's that, you know, that doesn't mean anything. We saw it with Ruiz and Joshua, and you know, like you said, Ben has been there, done it. He's gone the distance, but he's only had 3 UFC fights. Is that right? But the rest
yeah,
are all...
three fights in UFC. This was the whole thing. So everyone was saying that all the other organisations can't compete with the UFC. So what they've done, Demetrius Johnson dominated his weight class in the UFC. What they've done, his contract was up, so they've done a fighter swap. So they swapped Ben Askren for Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson's gone to 1, and he's just recently, last week, got knocked out. And Ben obviously came to UFC, and he got knocked out and choked out in two different fights. So that was really interesting. That was sort of a big move, big moment in his career. But I followed him. I absolutely hated the guy when he joined the UFC. But then when I started following him on his socials, he's actually a generally just nice guy. He's a dad. He lives in the middle of nowhere. He's like, every day he's cutting down trees in his backyard. He's quality. I think he's a good guy. And he done a vlog of Rocky, because that's how he's sort of approaching this fight. As he thinks he's the underdog. And like, he's got the videos of him punching the carcass, and he's great. But what you've got to remember is, this guy would not have taken this fight if the money wasn't there. And the money's there. He's coming out of retirement again. He's recently, I don't know how recently, but he's had hip surgery.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Back. So it's an interesting one. I can't wait to watch it. I really can't. It's one of those that I know all MMA fans will be rooting for him. Boxing fans are going to be rooting for Jake. So it is the McGregor Floyd fight all over again.
Yeah, but that's the interesting thing. See, I'm not necessarily rooting for Jake Paul. I think Ben Askren has got the experience, has got the mentality. You know, I saw him on, I think he actually went Ryan Garcia's podcast, and he's, you know, Ben Askren is a I hadn't heard of him until the Masvidal fight, because I love Masvidal. I think he's great, and that's the only time I'd heard of Ben Askren, but I only associated him with as the guy that Masvidal knocked out with a flying knee. And then I heard about him again with obviously the build up to this Jake Paul super fight between boxing versus MMA. And I think that's what Jake Paul has done really well is, I don't think the pressure is going to affect either one of them. Both have competed at top levels in different fields. Jake Paul loves to be loud out there, all eyes on him. So that's not going to affect him. Askren has done, yeah, he's been a top 10 in, what is it, the wrestling pre, you know, he's Olympian, yeah.
He was 2008 Beijing Olympics. He was an Olympian, and he's a Hall of Famer, wrestling Hall of Famer. So he's got the credentials. That's the same as John Jones is a Hall of Famer. John Jones is probably the best fighter in the world.
Yeah. So I mean, so I don't think pressure is going to be a thing. I think what it is, and I think going back to what I was saying when he went onto the Ryan Garcia podcast, is how is Jake Paul going to hold up when it's not going your way? The Gibbs fight he chose, because that both, you know, YouTuber versus YouTuber, you could see straight away he was awkward. You know, Jake Paul, you could see the experience compared to, you know, Gibb. And then when he fought Nate Robinson, again, he's been in camp, he's been training. This basketball guy said, yeah, I'll do it. 8 weeks, let's go. You know, he's carefully chosen. I think he's carefully chosen Askren, but he's overlooked a lot of Askren as well. And I think Askren knows how to survive and how to fight when things aren't going your way. He's got that heart, he's got that drive, he's got that determination. He's smart. He's had like you said, hip surgery recently. He's going to know how to fight. So if that becomes a problem, he can switch it up a little bit, change the pace. Whereas Jake Paul only knows one pace: out, let's go, flashy, hard. And I think Askren, after the 3rd or 4th round of when Jake Paul loads up and fires his best shot and it just hits Askren, and he's like, okay, I'm still going to keep coming towards you. I think that'll be a moment in Jake Paul's head where he's like, did I make the right decision here? What have I got myself into? Am I in the deep end? Because I honestly don't think Jake Paul will knock Askren out. I don't think it's there. I don't think he's got enough. I think he is the zombie that is going to keep coming.
He's the guy that would be. He's the guy that can knock someone out down the pub, right? So you go down the pub, it'd be,
yeah.
When you come to professional fighters, there's a level of conditioning that they have, and they are trained to take punches. Their neck muscles are ridiculous. They know what to do with their mouths. Like, you'll watch Joe Rogan straight away. If a fighter's gassed and they've got their mouth open, he's like, he's going to get knocked out because your jaw's swinging. If you tighten everything up, it's less likely that you're going to get much of a jar and get knocked out. What are your first memories of mixed martial arts? What's the first fighter that you can remember?
Well, in terms of UFC and MMA, Conor McGregor is like the only person I can associate UFC with.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. That's why I asked, because I've followed sort of MMA loosely, like Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell, all those greats, the ones that are exciting to watch. It then went real stale. I didn't watch the UFC really much. I'd watch YouTube highlights and stuff like that. Obviously, the Diaz brothers, unbelievable to watch. But then my first proper memory of me actually buying a main event was McGregor against Chad Mendes. But prior to that, I'd follow, as soon as he made his transition to the UFC against Marcus Brimage, I think it was Marcus Brimage, mate, he knocked the guy out so quickly. 6 uppercuts. I've never seen anyone throw the same punch and the guy to defend it. 6 uppercuts, finished him off. And then when he was on the deck, he's still going at him. And I thought, this is brilliant. This is me. And I followed his career. And he, for me, that's why I now love the UFC and MMA. And I think a lot of people relate, especially our age, to Conor McGregor. Yeah. And the reason, so if I said to you, I'm going to put 3 names out to you, and you tell me if you think Jake Paul can beat them. So Conor McGregor in a boxing match.
No.
Nate Diaz.
In a boxing match, I don't know. I don't know. And I like Nate Diaz. He's tough. He'll keep coming, but he likes to slap. He likes to get on the ground. You know, I love it when he lays on the ground and he just starts kicking his legs. You know, like. Yeah. But I don't know about that one.
Okay, and then Masvidal.
No chance. No chance.
Right. So 3 fighters that could have been options and would have been they'd have been a lot more of a payday than what Ben Askren is.
Yeah.
You can see what this has done for him. The pay-per-views are going to be ridiculous, but the 3 fighters, they're realistically the 3 that I thought that he'd go for when he was talking all that rubbish to McGregor. I thought he was going to be definitely one of those 3. But he knows he can't beat them at the minute. But I think if he dedicates another 2 or 3 years, I think he's got some big fights ahead of him. If he can beat Ben Askren, I think he's going to be a superstar in boxing, and he's going to take the bigger names. He's going to get the confidence. He's going to get people like Nate Diaz going, I'll fight you anywhere, anytime. And then he probably is going to get some offers for a crossover fight. And it won't surprise me if he doesn't branch into MMA. The amount of dedication he's put into boxing is actually surprising. He's putting his money into it and he's putting the time in.
Oh, definitely.
He looks good.
He looks good. He's training with, some serious contenders. He's coached, for example, BJ Flores, cruiserweight contender, 39 pro fights with only like 2 losses. He fought Tony Bellew in 2016. He's won major things in the cruiserweight division he's coached. So he knows boxing. He understands boxing. He's come out and said, this kid's getting better and better and better. Every time he goes in the ring, he's sparring with, again, top contenders. He's in with the right people. And all of them are saying, when he first came, he wasn't a boxer. They're saying now, he is a boxer. He's not just a YouTuber. He is a boxer. But the difference is he hasn't got that. He's got talent and he's showing that he's putting in the hard work. He's definitely got a natural ability for it. But I just don't think he's like a kid where things aren't going his way. You can imagine him throwing everything out the pram, can't you? And I think when you've got someone who's pressing you, weighing you down, pressing, because what I see Askren doing well is Askren can take a couple of punches and he can hold on, stop the circulation in the lungs, hold on, weigh him down. He'll know how to get those little like, you know, moments where it will take just enough out of Jake Paul that when he comes up, he's like, God, what happened there?
But then there's going to be some dirty boxing as well, and Jake is going to have to hold on to him for his life, because if he lets Askren hang on his neck, pull some shots underneath, it's going to take him out. And a lot of the time, when you see like an amateur boxing fight, they won't rip the body. They'll hang on to the neck and they'll try and punch over the top.
Yeah.
Ben, I guarantee, because Jake's a bigger guy, he's going to try and push. He's going to be ripping the body shots from inside, and they're the shots that Jake isn't going to see coming. He's a slow guy, but he hits hard. Ben does hit hard because he's sloppy, right? So you can foresee the shots. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jake in the later rounds can get out the way of those shots. How is he going to look when he's chucked in the deep end? And no one knows. No one knows. And Ben's had Freddie Roach come in, I think for a week, but I haven't heard Freddie Roach come out and put a statement out saying, yeah, Ben's the man. Ben's gonna.
Yeah. And we've seen the footage. We've seen the sparring footage.
But Ben's a troll. He came into the UFC. He absolutely. There was a live conference, and he just took the mick out of Dana White the whole time. Took the complete mick out of him. He's a troll, an absolute troll. He trolled Masvidal. He's trolled all the other fighters that he's fought against. I mean, look at him. He looks like a clown.
He is, but do you know what though? In the press conference, when Jake Paul pulled out the video of the knockout, his body language changed, and he looked like that knockout still holds a dark space in his brain, you know, because it was jokey, and then it was like he's like, you know, you could see the switch, and it was like, oh, I don't want to relive that moment again. And I think
that's why they touched each other at the end of that. I guarantee Ben was. But what you got to remember is, before that, him and all his entourage had gone into Ben, just sat on his own with his wife there, and told him that was intimidating him at the table. Have you seen that video?
No, I haven't.
And then Jake and his team are like cheering, saying that he's going to knock him out, and it's quite intimidating. He just sits there like this, and he's going, sit the F up whilst I'm talking to you, like really in his face. Ben's just sat there not bothered, like, mate, really?
Yeah.
But what you've got to remember is Jake's learning now what he should have been learning when he was 13 or 14, right? When he coming into this sort of amateur boxing.
Yeah.
Because this is a professional fight. Jake Paul is an amateur. He's been fighting other amateurs, and he's been building that momentum. This is his pro fight. This is a pro debut. Because I think Ben is probably as good as one of the lower end professional boxers. He's not completely unknown. He's got the conditioning. The thing he lacks is technique.
Yeah,
that's what he lacks. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen any of his weigh-ins. He's never cut. He's never ripped. He always comes in looking like he's healthy, looks like he's hydrated. But the guys he fights are naturally bigger framed, but they're shredding all that hydration, getting all that extra pounds out. He really probably could drop to 155 and look the part, look shredded, but I don't think he wants to. Because I'm not sure if you're aware, he called out Khabib.
Askren called out Khabib.
Yeah, so he's called out Khabib and told him to come out of retirement. He'll fight him. That's when he, after he beat Lawler, he's going to Dana White on stage. Get Khabib. I'll fight Khabib. But he'd already retired at this point. But that would be a fight I'd be interested to watch. Yeah. And I think Ben would do well. I really do.
But it's on that level playing field, you know, of they're both not known to be strikers.
Yeah.
So it's but
you say that Khabib knocked McGregor. Well, it was a knockdown. He nearly knocks him out with that overhand right.
Yeah. Because he stumbles back. Yeah.
He stumbles back and then he sits down. So
yeah.
He has got, and he's knocked people out. Khabib's knocked people out cold, and he isn't like Askren. He's got those fast twitch, so he can punch. But again, they both lack technique in the stand-up. So
but in their training camps, when they're in the UFC and all these other sort of, organizations, they're not just working on wrestling and their groundwork. Ben has been, since he's been a professional fighter, all throughout that career, he will have been practicing punches, kicks, knees, elbows. So even though he's not known as a striker, he still does know how to throw a punch that works for him. It doesn't technically look great. Did you say he had six knockouts in his career?
He's had 6 knockouts, but not starches, like TKOs.
TKOs, right? Okay, yeah. And is it like a flurry of punches, kicks, or is it just wild and he's just throwing all he can?
It's usually ground and pound, so he'll get them on the deck.
Right. So yeah.
So that's the thing. And what is interesting to me is seeing him go into a boxing match and him not being able to throw a kick, him being able not to throw a knee. He doesn't have to sit. He doesn't have to squat down, ready to take the other guy down. So he's going to be bolt upright. And I think this is why the sparring footage is a bit misleading, because Ben is now upright. He's got his hands up. He never fights with his hands up. He usually fights like a bear. He loves a spinning back fist, Ben. He loves it. You wouldn't know, and he lands them as well because he's so unorthodox.
But that's what I mean. He knows the range, though. He knows a fighter's range.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. I've been waiting now for weeks, and I'm just buzzing for it now.
No, it is. Well, we don't have to wait that long. It is this weekend.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So we've got some sort of like quick fire questions that we're going to go through, just to sort of round up this episode and kind of what we spoke about throughout the whole thing. I'll fire them off, and then we'll just sort of you say your piece, I'll say my piece. So the first question is, how do both fighters look physically and mentally?
I'd say mentally for Jake Paul, he's putting on if it's not a persona, great for him. He looks confident. His body physically, he's really toned up. He's in good shape. The fight is anything under 200 pounds, right? Ben Askren looks chunky at 170, so he's not going to be weighing in at much more than 170, where Jake Paul, I think his last fight is 189.
Yeah, 189.
And he's been building up a bit of muscle as well. So I think there's going to be about a 20-pound weight difference between the two. I really do. And Jake's going to be the bigger fighter. What about you?
I think physically, Jake Paul looks great. And in the training footage, he looks like he's able to absolutely throw everything on that bag and then hop on the skipping rope and still keep going. So he looks great. Mentally, I think he mentally believes he will win. I think he mentally believes he is the better fighter. But I think once he's in the ring and Askren is not playing the way that Jake Paul thinks he should, I think you'll see a mental breakdown from Jake Paul. And I think that's what will be the deciding factor. I think Askren just looks calm, collected. He's done it a million times. He's done the press conferences for all different fights. He's competed at the top level for everything he's done. This is a bit of a joke, but it's still a top level. They're going to have huge pay-per-view numbers. And I don't think anything will get to him. Like I said earlier, the only thing I do think that got to him is the Masvidal footage. But once he's in that ring and he's taking a punch and giving a punch, Masvidal's going to be in the back of his. He's not going to be in the back of it. That moment's going to be dead and gone. And I think he's going to be the smarter, more experienced fighter.
Ben, if he wins or loses, is going to take his biggest payday ever. So,
exactly.
He's got that relaxedness. He's not come out and said that he's absolutely gonna. He's just basically said, "Look, he's a YouTube kid. I took the money because it's an easy fight."
Yeah.
And in his fighter's mentality, it is an easy fight, and he's obviously got 19 wins behind him. So he thinks in his mind, no matter what anyone says, he thinks he's going to win. So it's going to be interesting.
It is. Okay. Next question is, what looks good from both fighters so far? So what have we seen so far that has impressed you with both fighters?
Jake Paul's easy. His physique, he's looking unbelievable, and his bag work. He's not just hitting the bag hard, and it's not. It sounds aggressive, and his footwork is matching it. And like you say, he's straight back on the skipping rope, and he can skip as well. So he's got that rhythm. Good thing for Ben. That, like I said earlier, that upright posture. I think he's been hitting the pads as well hard. It looks good, but it's lazy, sloppy. Technique isn't there. But I still think he can relax a bit more in this fight because he's only got to worry about the hands. And you'll see if you look at his workout footage from a from an MMA fight compared to what he's been putting out recently. He's upright, his hands are up, his guard's up. So I think that's what looks good about Ben. Yeah, no,
I agree. I think in terms of what looks good, Jake Paul has hit the nail on the head of everything looks good. He looks physically good. Everything looks great. Ben Askren, the footage of him sparring looks terrible. He doesn't look in shape. I know he never, like you said, he never looks like he's in shape. But if you were
saying something good, you're supposed to be saying something good.
I know. I can't think of anything good to say of what looks good about Ben Askren. Is the only thing that I can say is good is that he's been there before. He knows what it's like to get hit, and I think that is something that is internal, not external. So external, Ben Askren isn't giving me anything good at the moment. Okay, next one. What do you think separates the two fighters?
I think what separates the two fighters is endurance. Because you've got one end of the scale, because they've both jumped in the ring. They've both had, we'll call it a professional fight. They've both had professional fights in front of a crowd. What separates them is the endurance. Ben has had 21 fights in MMA.
Yeah,
MMA, not including his professional wrestling career. That endurance is going to play a key part in this, and it's one of those where if Jake Paul hasn't got that endurance, he's going to lose. It doesn't matter if Ben Askren hasn't got the technique; he could still win the fight.
Yeah.
But where Jake might not have that endurance, he's a big guy. He's got a big chest on him now. That's just going to sap all the energy out of him, especially if he comes in weighing heavy. I think that's the endurance piece. Definitely, that's what separates them by a mile.
Yeah. Again, I've got to agree with what you said. I think the endurance piece, but I also think the fighting IQ is in Ben's favour. I think sort of finding range is in Ben's favour. I think the fight IQ in terms of knowing the distance, knowing the range. Okay, do I ease off this round? Do I come out strong next round? Whereas Jake Paul, the 2-3 fights that he's had, he's gone all guns blazing. Askren will know, okay, maybe I give him a round, ease off this round, or first round, let him come out guns blazing, because how's he going to cope in the fourth round? So I think that knowledge and that IQ is what separates the two fighters, as well as the endurance, because you just don't know. It's Ben Askren has, like you said, even when you told me it was 5 minutes, I was blown away. You try fighting for 2 minutes, you're gone. Do that for 5 minutes, where not only are you fighting, you're pulling, you're pushing, you're rolling, and that is more physically demanding. And you're getting kicked, in the ribs. You're getting the air taken out of you with kicks. I think you touched on it at the start of the conversation. We've not seen Jake Paul work the body because he doesn't know how to work the body. Askren, albeit his technique is awful, he'll know, right, this well-placed shot right here towards the solar plex or just under the chest or wherever it is. Ben knows where to hit. Yeah. And he'll know where to hit, how to hit, when they're clenched up. Is he going to be going for the cheeky liver shots that's going to take, and he's going to think, hold on a minute, I've not had that done to me before. So I think that's what separates the two fighters in my eyes.
Yeah, good points.
Right. So the last question, before we move on to who are you backing and how do you see it going? The last question before we move on to that is, how do you think both fighters will come out? And we've kind of touched on it. I think Jake Paul's going to come out all guns blazing, round 1, 2, and 3. But how do you see both fighters coming out of the blocks?
Jake's going to try and mimic Masvidal. He's seen that weakness. He's going to come out. He wants a big knockout victory. He wants to rock the MMA world and absolutely blitz this guy. He's coming out firing. Ben is coming out of his hands up, hopefully, and weathering the storm. That's how I see it. It's both of them are coming out. Ben's going to be calm as anything. He's going to be laughing. He's coming out in a robe. Have you seen his funky robe?
No.
It's leopard print.
Right.
He doesn't care. He's going to come out. He's going to grow his hair out. He has been growing his hair out. He's just going to go in there for. It's going to be like a sparring session for him, right?
Yeah.
But Jake's coming out swinging, banging left hooks, the right hooks. He's going to be wild with it. That's what I think.
I think it's the ego side of things. I think Jake Paul has such a big ego that he wants to make a statement to the world. I knocked out Ben Askren. You know, I think that is what's going to be the downfall for Jake, because I don't think he's got it in him, or I think he's going to have a real shock when he throws that big left, that big right, and Askren is still looking at him with his wild hair and he's still moving around. I think it's going to completely break Jake Paul's mentality and be like, well, I can't throw this for 8 rounds. And I think that's what's going to be I think that's where, for me, it tips it towards Askren win. So again, sort of moving on from that, who are you backing for the fight, and how do you see the fight finishing?
I'd love to give 2 predictions, but I can't. I'm going to stick with Ben. I think Ben's going to weather the storm, and he might even get the stoppage in the latter rounds. I'm thinking, hold me 7th or 8th round stoppage, Ben Askren to stop Jake Paul. But that's my. I'm not going to say my other prediction because I want it to be heard first on here.
Yeah.
So 7th or 8th round stoppage. Ben Askren knocking out Jake Paul.
Wow. No, that's a good one. I don't think there's going to be a knockout by either guy. I think Jake Paul has got the conditioning to go the rounds, although all throughout the channel we've been saying it's going to break him down. Can he keep up? I think it will break him when he realizes he's not going to knock out Askren, and it's going to be a hell of a harder fight than he initially thought it will. And I think the early rounds will go to Jake, the later rounds will go to Ben, and I think you'll slowly see Jake Paul towards the end start to gas out. 6th to 8th round, he's going to be blowing. I don't think Askren's going to punish him and pounce on him, because I can't see Askren jumping in with a 4 combo knockout. I think he's going to I think Askren's going to troll him. I do think Askren's going to jab him, move around, jab him. So I think Askren's going to take it on points, but I would like to see an Askren knockout.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Interesting. Right. So that is it from our first episode on 37 rounds. We hope you all enjoyed this week's video. If you did, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we shall see you guys next week, same time, for whatever crazy fight comes up from now until then.
Catch you next episode.
That's it, guys. Cheers. Bye.